Hello, dear friends. I can't keep quiet, no matter how much I want to, when I feel we are only a few days away. Opinion piece. The hermit who came out of his cave. Thus spoke Zarathustra, when he came down from the mountain. This is a gradual ascension. We live in the age of stupidity. The mad don't know they are mad. All will come in the stillness of the night. We are but a few days away. Inspiration is fickle and capricious. There is a flaw in the humankind's condition. Temptations of Saint Anthony in his cave. The national god watches the election. When Wall Street sneezes, the world catches a cold. Algeria submits its application to join BRICS officially. Let's start. When a humble hermit comes out of his cave to fulfill a mission of outreach after many years of prayer, fasting, silence, meditation, penance, and practice of holiness to the extreme degree, he transmits a fresh and authentic message, the fruit of his personal experience and spiritual realization, which attracts many disciples who give him power, prestige, and money, and also beautiful young disciples, girls, who test his temperance because we are not made of stone. In most cases, these gurus end up falling into worldly temptations, full of vanity and pride, that end up inflating their ego, even provoking delusions of grandeur, charging millions for their causes, and end up being part of their corrupt system. I do not say this as a reproach, but as a pity, because I have seen many fellows fall by the wayside, and it hurts a lot. I confess that I also fell into some temptation, but not too much. There is no need to strive to be humble when you realize that you only know a small drop of an ocean of wisdom. Zarathustra. Thus spoke Zarathustra. A book for everyone and no one is a text written between 1883 and 1885 by the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, considered his masterpiece. Zarathustra, equivalent to the Zoroaster of the Persians, is a hermit who lives in seclusion on a mountain, where throughout his retreat he reflects on life and the nature of humankind. Once he feels the time is right, he decides to return to the world to communicate the fruit of his knowledge to it. He feels the need to transmit his knowledge to the world, for which he writes a book. Similarly, in his eagerness to communicate, Zarathustra descends from the mountain and mingles with the village. This is evident at the beginning of the prologue with the phrase, in quotes, "I weary of my wisdom like the bee that has gathered too much honey. I need hands that reach out." Zarathustra is a messiah who brings human being the news of his salvation. He proclaims the advent of the will to power and the cycle of the eternal return of life. For Nietzsche, morality is to be replaced by truth. It is to say, the human being in the service of himself, of his nature, devoted to the consummation of his own existence. Historically, Zarathustra was the primary author of the values of good and evil. Now he has to be the transmuter of these values on a new scale unprecedented in the history of the West. Something personal. I was one of those crazy hermits, and they took me for crazy for many years until one day people started to listen to me. I failed in many worldly jobs because it was not my destiny, and I became a journalist as a means of officially legalizing my mission as a popularizer. A journalist is allowed to be a little crazy because it is part of his neurotic profession, but not a doctor who has to perform open heart surgery, nor an engineer who has to design a bridge that can fall if he makes the slightest mistake, nor a taxi driver who can have a traffic accident. Right now, my innermost feeling is one of weariness and exhaustion, because this process is very tiring and the promises of heaven are slow in coming. Educating the masses requires the patience of the saintly job, even though I have the title of adult educator, because most of them are not even interested in my information. Others, on the other hand, understand perfectly well what I say, and a word to the wise is enough. The great master spoke in parables to avoid confrontation and to make it understandable to his more awkward pupils. I use pseudonyms, euphemisms, and metaphors to enter gently, because I am not concerned with the confrontation of the indigo children, but with the insinuation of the crystal children. This discourse is reminiscent of that used in totalitarian regimes in order not to clash with the state. You can't maintain a brilliant discourse every day, because the masses of inspiration that we writers have are very fickle and capricious. Some days help more than others, but I am always grateful for their help. Getting ahead of the future is a high-risk activity because it is based on one's own and others' intuitions, but it is done to the best of one's ability. If this information were official, there would be no need to enter my channel, because it would be enough to turn on the TV. Sources of information are scarce and fragmentary, and most of it concerns internal USA affairs, which are of little interest to those of us living on the periphery of the American empire, unless it has repercussions for us. But it has too many repercussions for us. For example, when Wall Street sneezes, the world catches a cold, and if the dollar falls, all of us who are tied to the world's currency fall. Divine Providence. As Steve Biko says, people seem to respond when I come from affection or clarity. Divine qualities arise spontaneously or are invoked on the inhale. Once I am in that quality, usually love, I get along with people and people get along with me. This is all new to me. I feel more relaxed as this transition is happening, because I trust in divine providence, which is the loving care of the Creator for his creatures. This is an emergency. This is a gradual ascension. If I could see, I would probably see our bodies changing from carbon to crystalline as all this is happening. I carry with me the certainty that the role of affection, caring, and tenderness in all of this will be decisive. Origins. My original hermit's cave was in the ancient Nepalese kingdom of Bhaktapur, one of the banks of the Kali-Gandaki River, a tributary of the Ganges, and near the devotee city of Bharatpur. There I had great realizations until one day I was beheaded by a hired assassin while meditating. Possibly it was paid for by someone who hated me for being too heterodox, I have always been. In the past, the city gained its hegemony from its privileged position on the India-Tibet route. Taxes and tolls collected from traders brought it great wealth. Every autumn, traders brought sheep from Tibet. On their return journey, the traders bought back grain, sugar, or Buddhist inscriptions. This prosperity encouraged cultural life. Temple builders developed their own style of pagoda, which later spread from Tibet to Japan. Bhaktapur is a town in Nepal located in the Kathmandu Valley, 13 kilometers east of the capital at an altitude of 1,400 meters. It was founded in the 12th century by King Ananda Deva Maya as Kuopa to become the capital of the Maya Rajas. The city was built in the shape of a triangle, formed by the three temples of the elephant-headed god Ganesha on the outskirts of the city. Until the 16th century, the city dominated Nepal politically and economically. After the Gurkha conquest in 1769, the city withdrew into itself, maintaining economic and political self-sufficiency and independence. I long for my blessed cave of enlightenment, because the best service one can do for humankind is to become enlightened. For enlightenment is contagious, in the good sense of the word. I ask every day for ascension to my inner God, for there is only inner religion. It's not a selfish desire, but the desire for solidarity, because I cannot bear the suffering of others. The Temptations of Saint Anthony. The Gospels inspired Saint Anthony Abbot to sell all his possessions and live a life of solitude in the Egyptian desert. He established for himself a quiet hermitage far from the world, but he could not completely escape his most persistent enemy. The devil, who knew that Saint Anthony was a very holy man and close to God, threw everything he had at him. Since the devil could not succeed in keeping Anthony away from God through the riches of the world, he tried to attack him both physically and spiritually. After failing to entice him with riches, the devil attacked the young man by pestering him by night and harassing him by day, so that even those who saw Anthony could see the struggle between the two. However, after each temptation, Saint Anthony strengthened his body with his faith, prayers, and fasting. Frustrated, the devil tried to confront Anthony by assuming the appearance of a child and conversing with him. Anthony replied, in quotes, "Then you are utterly contemptible. You are black in your soul, as weak as a child. Henceforth you cause me no more consent, for the Lord is with me and helps me. I shall see my adversaries defeated." For a time, the devil left Anthony alone, but he returned again to test him, this time with a multitude of demons. The devil hit Anthony hard physically, trusting that Anthony would return to his former way of life out of fear. Anthony, unshaken in his faith, cried out to the devil, in quotes, "Here am I, Anthony, who have not been caught by your blows, and tough you give me more. Nothing separates me from the love of Christ. Tough an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear." Whatever temptation we encounter, Anthony teaches us that faith, prayer, fasting, and the sign of the cross are enough to overcome the snares of the evil one. The devil may seem powerful, but the saints prove time and again that he is not, and that he is no match for those who put their trust in God. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand firm against the wiles of the devil. For the wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Theory of Stupidity. The Theory of Stupidity by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Stupidity is the notable dullness in understanding things, and insanity in the deprivation of judgment, or the use of the reason, or the exaltation of the mind, produced by some affection or other incentive. There is a fundamental flaw in the humankind. In quotes. The insane do not know they are insane. We are not insane because our brains do not work, but because we have accepted the lie as a substitute for the truth. We are deceiving each other. Know the truth, and the truth will set you from insanity. Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Live these principles as if your life depended on it. I think we are describing narcissism. Children are immature junior narcissists, but with proper education they become mature, responsible, moral. But they have destroyed the family and the education of children, condemning them to narcissism, infantilism, immaturity. This would be the meaning of born again. We are selfish as children of the flesh, but when we mature and accept responsibility, we are born of the Spirit. No more narcissism, immorality, or childishness. When a child is traumatized, his moral development is interrupted. He is on a karmic wheel, and repeats the same trauma over and over again until he accepts his responsibility. This is what ritual abuse would be about, to lock them into psychopathy. The cure for narcissism, immorality, and infantilism is personal responsibility. No one can impose personal responsibility on anyone. No one can impose morality. It's a personal decision. Either you accept the responsibility or you don't. Reset News. The US electorate will have to choose this November 8th to renew a large number of seats in the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the state governorships in a midterm election that is expected to be decisive for the future, in a climate marked by the record inflation and political polarization. The midterm elections may or may not be held, with a possible clash pending. Multiple sources report rumors of a midterm election cancellation, but this has not been confirmed. Some 86 countries would come under military law in the next 3 months. They are still using dominant voting machines in 49 states, and early voting has shown that those machines were already exchanging ballots algorithmically. The National Guard has activated cybersecurity teams in 14 states ahead of the election to counter any possible interference. Check Wi-Fi connections around voting areas and report findings to election authorities. Voting machines are not supposed to be connected to the internet, as was the case in the last election. The US is behind the scenes asking its banks to maintain some ties with Russia, according to Bloomberg. Algeria officially submits its application to join BRICS. OK Twitter. I can say without reservation that we are there. We are only a few days away. You can't unring a bell that has rung. Prayers have finally been answered. Time is of the essence for those prepared. All will come in the stillness of the night after the banking alignments. We sleep while the markets sleep, but the new numbers appear. Activation comes while there is a kind of silence around the world. I am eager to share what I have but I can't yet. According to Max Zera, in quotes, most of my sources say it will happen between now and Friday 11th November. I and others have been asked to keep quiet specifically about the timing. There could be a false flag, and it will look a lot worse as the mainstream media hypes it up. Then elections will be held while a state of emergency is declared, and then they could intervene and expose the plots. It's difficult to discern the truth from a whole world of chaos. This would be a near-death experience for the nation. Puffner said, "You will see all that in black and white before too long. We are all ever vigilant and keep our vigilance high wherever is necessary for the brave and the forces to work to bring about these changes. There is no telling where, but the guardians of freedom are doing the heavy lifting in these difficult times. Just go ahead and be willing to be an advocate for good, true and right outcomes." 10-foot wall erected around the Federal Reserve Bank in Washington, D.C. The nation's trackers report no diesel fuel in parts of North Carolina, Oklahoma and Tennessee, leaving some supermarkets with only 3 days' worth of food on the shelves. All ships are sailing in the same direction now, about to reach their common destination in the red month of November. The eruption of Tonga's volcano earlier this year produced an unprecedented plume of water vapor that could cause crop failures across the globe for 2 years. The eruption sent a record ash cloud more than 57 kilometers into the air, experts tell ABC News. The mainstream media is trying to silence the people of Brazil by refusing to report on the mass protests that continue to this day. James Gilliland reports heavy UFO activity in the skies over Washington and Hawaii. A multidimensional war is being waged with massive cleansing. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.